Hello, and welcome to another episode of Heretics to Hegemony. I am your host, Aleph, as always, and I am joined by my two amazing co hosts, Mr. Jay Nasty and Jeremiah, the Floridian. I hope you all have had a good week, and I am gonna, as always, try to get to it as quickly as possible because it is yet another week in America. This week was we saw some stuff that is really I am familiar with because I was born and raised somewhere else, and I have seen this kind of dynamics many times in different contexts. But I think for an American audience and for an international audience, it's a little different to see people being canceled, so to speak, for speaking up and for free speech. This week, as a result of Charlie Kirk's murder, there was a kind of a crackdown on people who said stuff that the administration or the supporters of Charlie Kirk didn't like, especially those of who are in power. And I wanted to hear from my co-hosts about, especially you, Nasty, about what do you think of the whole repercussion and the aftermath and the fallout of not just Charlie Kirk's death, but those who were not perhaps as sympathetic, or they were even made fun or said stuff that were not supposed to when it comes to Charlie Kirk and that whole thing. So, what do you think happened there?
Well, nothing that surprised me, that's for sure. This was definitely guaranteed to happen. It's just kind of to the degree that because now that the culture war, we always talk about how the culture war is a distraction. Culture war isn't a distraction anymore. The culture war just boiled the fuck over, right? So it's pretty much front and center in the American zeitgeist right now. Um, Now, the whole idea of canceling, again, I find it all kind of stupid. Like, good job, you got like a barista fired for, making a dumb joke about Charlie Kirk. Is it tasteless? Yeah, it's probably tasteless. But you also have to remember that these are young people that have grown up terminally online. A lot of life has been gamified to them. You know what I mean? We see this all the time. You know what I mean? Everybody's either a main character or an NPC or this or that. So now people just see violence and it doesn't really phase them, I think, too much anymore. Now, as far as people getting fired, I think an important thing to note is that this has happened from both sides, and we're seeing it now coming from the right? It's, you know, 4 years ago, people that were saying shit about COVID were getting deplatformed and pulled off Twitter, and a lot of that was from pressure from the Biden administration. So let's not make any sort of mistakes here that, this kind of pressure has not occurred in the past. Bill Maher just did a whole bit on this about how he got canceled. His show got canceled back before cancel culture was even a cancel culture thing. So this is nothing new. And really the main thing is a business, a company, they have literally the right to refuse service to anybody, right? It doesn't matter. If they also have the right to hire, fire anybody that they choose that doesn't follow the values of their company or reflect the values of their company. As to whether or not it's the right thing or the wrong thing to do, I don't think is really that important of an argument. I think what's the more important thing to look at is the situation that happened with Jimmy Kimmel. Not because Jimmy Kimmel, I personally haven't really ever found him very funny. I don't really care about his show. I haven't watched a lot of late night in a long time, right? Um, I know that late night definitely became a lot more political than it ever was. You can see some funny clips from Johnny Carson, like talking about that, on the reasons why we shouldn't politicize our entertainment. But that being said, if ABC decided that they wanted to cancel Kimmel based just off of that, that's absolutely their right. However, there's something else that's kind of looming in the background, and that's the fact that, the FCC chair basically, I can't remember if he went on Fox News, but he went on one of the morning talking head shows and in no uncertain terms basically said we can do this the easy way or we can do this the hard way, right? Essentially threatening ABC and their parent companies that they were going to basically pull their affiliate licenses, and forcing the hand of ABC and Disney to cancel Kimmel. That's obviously a problem when you're talking about government oversight and government reach, right? Now we have the government agencies digging their hands into what is considered to be free speech. The sad part about all of this is if you've looked into Charlie Kirk at all, he would be completely appalled by this, right? He's always, first and foremost, if you look at a lot of his background, he was a very much a free speech person, right? So like them doing this and using his name again, it's this, his the blood's barely soaked into the ground and already the vultures are picking, right? And they're going to do whatever they can. They're going to get their chunk, they're going to get their flesh, they're going to get whatever they want, and use it for whatever means and narrative that they would like. It's an egregious, I think, attack against free speech in the United States. Again, there's not freedom. People are having this big conversation about freedom of speech versus hate speech versus freedom of from consequences, but they need to be very careful, this administration, because a lot of their base are people that are pretty staunch constitutionalists, and free speech is pretty much one of those things that a lot of Americans, especially many on the right, don't compromise about. So when you get people like Pam Bondi going on the same talking head things, saying that there's free speech and then there's hate speech, and we're gonna come after these people, right? That ain't it. That ain't it. And if this administration was wise, if they wanted to, if they wanted, they should probably immediately get rid of Pam Bondi as well as Kash Patel. This whole investigation was a fucking blunder from the get-go. Kash Patel is just, don't even get me started about the guy. He's so wildly fucking unqualified, and should immediately, both of those people should be removed from their jobs. But again, free speech is free speech, and free speech is a two-way street. You have to tolerate hate speech if you're going to tolerate everybody else's speech. There's no compromise there, right? Again, there's not freedom from consequences. Nobody is saying that. But when you start getting the government digging their hands into this kind of, it obviously shows that we have, the federal government is just gross, and they're literally trying both sides. It doesn't matter. They're all in bed together. They just want to control us all. They want to know what we hear, what we say, what we think, influence the narrative. It's, they're going to do it through media. They're going to do it through every fucking channel that they possibly can. They're going to take people that get murdered, and they're going to prop them up and exploit them and use them for their own political gains. And nobody should be surprised by it.
What do you think, Jay? Do you?
Well, this is the most privileged country in the whole world is having like a midlife crisis where everybody's so upset about everything. The internet, the information age is just, it's kind of like modernization, destroyed and polluted all the lakes and the rivers and the air. This information age is just polluting the human species' ability to fucking communicate with each other, to have any kind of rational thought. I always said that, you can go into the largest library in the world and have no idea, no numbers, no aisles, no nothing like that, and go find me an actual good book. Because when you put that many things in a room together, there's a lot of crap. And it serves different purposes. Some people love romance novels. I think it's fucking stupid. But that's just me. I like shit no one else likes. I understand that, right? But yeah, this is ridiculous. It's all ridiculous, but it is. It's the mass consumption of media. It went from, no, it's not great when you only had 4 channels when I grew up or whatever, 3 at one point, probably 2 at one point. I don't know. I know, when Fox came, that was the biggest change in like media history because there was a new one. It wasn't just ABC, CBS, and NBC anymore. And, oh God, what a fucking horrible, just that extra one fucked everything, right? Now we got 1 million of them. And they're all spouting bullshit. No one knows the truth anymore because no one's willing. It's all about, come back. I thought about this last one we did. It still comes down to that discussion on morality we had. Everything with the human species comes down to the stories we tell ourselves. I don't think anything's going to change when it comes to the support of Trump. There's going to be farmers out of work because of his changes. There's already defunding of police, which makes it so we're going to have more crime, which gives him more. Everything's done in order to destabilize every single system. And that's what people want. They're so fed up with the two-party system, and they've offered us nothingness, and they sold us down the river a long time ago, that people on both sides, no matter how much they want it to get better, are willing to watch it burn.
Yeah, it's a perfect storm of a whole bunch of stuff that started from long ago, as you mentioned. Like, I was reading about how during Saint Reagan of Chattanooga, or whatever, he was one of the people actually that kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Canceled, for lack of a better term, the fairness doctrine between that was part of the FCC actually, rules that if you are presenting a view, you have to present the opposite view as well. American population deserves to have two very opposing perspectives on any issue. It was Reagan actually that deregulated it and allowed for a place like, for example, Fox News or MSNBC to be created. Now, I would be the contrarian always, and I will try to say or bring a different perspective just so our audience gets a different perspective and we can talk about it, because sitting here and we all can agree with each other, that's not going to necessarily add to it. But I will say that I have personally seen a big difference between the two sides' approach to this, because although I totally 100% agree, Democrats are also guilty of canceling or using free speech as kind of a weapon to their own benefit. I have to be honest, I'm having a hard time finding a Democratic vice president taking over a podcast of some rando online and be like, well, if you hear somebody says something, go call their employers. And, even Bill Maher, I'm glad you brought that up, because I passionately dislike Bill Maher. But I will say that the reason that he got fired from, I think his show was called Politically Incorrect, if I'm not mistaken, it was because, I don't know if you remember, it's because he said, we shoot cruise missiles from 3,000 miles away, and that is cowardly. And those who get on planes and fly them into the buildings cannot be called cowards. And people really didn't like that. And it was right after 9/11. I think it was either in 2001 or it was early 2002.
Was he wrong, though?
That's exactly what I was going to say. Like, as soon as you...
Commercial break, everybody.
No.
I'm just saying, like, I know that sounds terrible, but was he wrong, right? Like, I don't believe he was wrong.
Consequences at the time is what he paid. He lost his job. But the voice that he had and the things that he was saying, which were being shut down, continued on. Because he's still around. And he's as unfriendly against the left as he is the right. I mean, I'm with you. I would also smoke a big fat blunt with Bill Maher. But some days, I'm not as bad as you, but some days I want to punch him because he's got a very punchable face. But those things, no one wanted to hear that stuff. But nationalism, this is the thing, that after 9/11, nationalism, it reinstilled that side of our country, which was kind of, the Patriot Act. I mean, it was another stepping stone in this direction towards what Trump has just amplified. Because even with this discussion, that is not what the FCC is here for. That is not their job. That shouldn't even be legal for them to do. And the companies that rescinded should be ashamed of themselves, just like the banks that have rescinded, just like the universities that rescinded. Everybody that's bent over and just taken it because they think it's going to work out for them. That we talk about these authoritarian. I mean, it's not just that he's taking over the media. A lot of the media is just gone. We're going to go that way because if not, That's not a good sign when every single like aspect of your society is caving because they don't think they have a choice. So if he's not an authoritarian already, everybody's just kind of giving him authority.
And I totally agree with you in a sense that they should not have canceled Bill Maher when he said that. And although it was an absolute joke when I said I'll punch him in the face. I would never, punch anybody for no reason in the face. However, I was just saying that I don't like him. However, he was, I don't want it to say he was right so I can be misunderstood as I'm supporting those who fly airplanes into buildings. That's not the point, right? The whole point was he said something that a lot of us would be like, well, it's really cowardly to throw missiles at people 5,000 miles away, as opposed to, I'm not even going to use 9/11, but samurais. When you have a sword, you have to face that whole idea. But at the same time, that idea of lack of tolerance for the opposing speech or the opposing ideology or philosophy, add to that this, I don't know if siloification is actually a word, but turning everything into separate silos, like people are not talking to each other anymore. They're just talk upon each other themselves, right? There is no opposition.
It's compartmentalization, right? So, and creating of an echo chamber, right? So that's the thing is that people, when you stop having conversations with people, you're only going to be surrounded by people that inevitably that agree with you, right? If your solution to seeing, hearing, being exposed to things that you disagree with is to make those things go away, you're only going to be surrounded by people who think exactly like you, and you're never going to have any sort of new rational thought. You know what I mean? Like it's and people, that's exactly what people do. They're very protective of their identity. Some of it's that some cost fallacy. Like they think, oh, I've thought this way my entire life, so I have to be, keep thinking, and I can only surround myself with people like this or like that, right? When in reality, you're really doing yourself a disservice, right? Like that's why I was always against any sort of deplatforming of anybody, right? So like, yes, what Alex Jones says is crazy to some, but he should be allowed to say it, right? It doesn't mean that he's not going to get sued into fucking oblivion by the families of Sandy Hook victims. That's the consequences of your free speech, right?
But okay, on that, should it take that fucking long to get it done? How long ago did that lawsuit start? So it is, I get you, but unfortunately that's the problem, is fixing that issue is so difficult. Like people can just come out and spit filth and never pay consequences. There are a lot of people not paying consequences. There's a lot of people doing parasite cleanses right now. And the people that have told these people they should do parasite cleanses, which is just not good, should be held to account. I mean, that's just one incident. This is one incident. The amount of that's just one thing on the internet. There's a billion of those.
Well, we have the vaccination board of the CDC just got replaced with a bunch of fucking social media influencers like Corey and Casey fucking Means, like they're some sort of fucking
hello polio.
You know what I mean? And I mean it's completely bullshit. You know what I mean? It's again, when you want to look at like fascism and things like that, these are the fascistic moves, right? Getting rid of people who don't toe the party line, getting rid of, intellectuals, thinkers, people that are asking questions and asking the tough questions, silencing the people that are asking those questions. It's gross.
People forget that the first victims of the Nazi party were not Jewish people or the Romas. The first group that was targeted was the political opposition. The first group that was targeted were the philosophers, those who could actually articulate an idea. And it seems to me it's really dangerous and scary, because as a person who has traveled freaking 10,000 miles to get away from tyranny, I landed in a motherfucking tyranny. And it's really annoying to see that, you spent that much time and stuff and arrive at the place that your very core of philosophy is in jeopardy. But at the same time, I will add to this that the difference between knowledge and information is completely not understood by American public. Like I teach at the university. I have college kids. These are all over 18, adult who have the right in the United States who vote and to have guns. And they come into my classes, and you know what is the most common phrase I hear in my classes? I saw it on TikTok, or I saw on Facebook, or I saw a documentary. And I'm like, what happened to books? And I know it's a very elitist. Okay, fine. Let's not talk about books. It's like, oh, books. But just the idea of what's the difference between having access to information and being able to actually examine that information. This whole, as you mentioned, I mean, people don't know. I was actually reading the cell phones that we have right now has about 1.5 million times the processing power that we had for the lunar lander. The computer on the lunar lander was 1.5 million times weaker when it comes to processing. Now, these kids, it's like a fire hose of information, right? As soon as they open the screen, it's the information that comes at them. But unfortunately, they have they have no tools, they have no mechanism, they have no training of dissecting between and distinguishing between what is information and what is bogus, what is crap. So when you translate that into the head of CDC's vaccine is not just some rando barista in nowhere, Utah serving coffee. This guy makes decision for your kids and my family and our society. But I hear so many times, as you said, this is the part that it really is no left or right. This kind of ignorance and lack of knowledge when it comes to basic stuff is really, really annoying. And I will pass it to you with this. I remember there was a time those who believed the earth is flat were just sitting in their own home, in their pajamas, watching whatever it is they were watching. Would you believe that 2 years ago or last year or something like that, there was a flat earther conference in Colorado and over 10,000 people attended? That's a disaster. Like absolute disaster. I don't even know what to say, honestly.
We're behind like Turkey when it comes to how many people in our country believe in evolution. I mean, there's like really screwed up countries, and they actually are smarter than us.
The Surgeon General of, I believe, the state of Florida, but they're the first state to rescind the immunization and vaccination requirements for incoming students, right? And in a press conference with, I believe it's the surgeon, I don't know if that's what they call themselves, that basically the head doctor for the state of Florida that makes all recommendations.
You're right. It's a Surgeon General of state of Florida.
The Surgeon General of the state of Florida, not the United States, but the state of Florida, on a press conference said that he did not want to tell parents how to raise their children or what kind of medical. Now, here's the problem that I have with that. You're the Surgeon General. That's your job. That's literally your job. Like, you have been elected to that position because of the trust in you and your medical knowledge and your medical background to make factual, evidence-based recommendations to the state government in order to protect the health care of all of the citizens of that state, children included in that, right? So that is who people are going to look to in order to get the direction in which direction they should go when it comes to healthcare, right? So to hear somebody who has been entrusted with the healthcare of your children say that I'm not going to tell you how to, that's basically just opening it up to like, I don't fucking know, just give them whatever. Like, they don't have to, who cares? Like, I don't know, maybe they'll get measles. And like now, if you've noticed, there's been kind of a strange uptick in sort of older diseases that have been blossoming up in places, and people that are getting sick and getting listeria from eating raw unpasteurized milk from some fucking dude's farm that they because they watch TikTok and oh raw milk is the way to do it. You know what I mean? So you're right. You know, like the knowledge comes from being able to intake information, compare it to other information that you've been exposed to, and form your own opinion based off your own knowledge around the subject, right? And you're not going to get that from a TikTok. It's just not, you're not ever going to get that from a TikTok. And people think that they do get it from a TikTok. That's the problem, is people see this stuff and they take it as gospel immediately, right? This one quick life hack will do X, Y, and Z, and little do you know, next thing you know, you're drinking fucking colloidal silver, like.
And not only that, as you mentioned, the Surgeon General of a state, whose only job is to tell people what to put in their kids and what not to put in their kids. Not only he comes and says, "Oh, that's not my job. That's not what I do." He also compares health recommendations by a state authority to slavery. Like, I'm sitting there, it's like absurdity on top of absurdity on top of absurdity. And another thing I will say is, and this is no criticism of especially my students. I love my students. They are smart. At least they are thriving or striving to be more knowledgeable and stuff. But at the same time, I will use them to beat down on the whole system, because not only you hear, I heard it on TikTok or I saw a documentary about it as if it is an actual academic scientific research, but also it's lack of philosophy, lack of personal philosophy, personal worldview. The idea of, I don't know about y'all, when I was growing up in Iran, even today, radio TV is state-owned. So there is no for-profit corporation and media outlets. That has its own massive problems. What good about it when I was growing up is there wasn't a whole lot of programming. So at some time during the day when I was in elementary school and middle school, I wanted to say from 2 p.m. To around 6 p.m. or 5 p.m., you would turn on TV. It would just be statics. There was nothing on TV. You could change the channels. There was only 3, and all 3 of them were off. There was nothing on TV. I had no option other than to sit with myself and look around and think and contemplate the idea of either reading something or being bored. Right? And that being bored and reading and being bored allowed me to think like, who am I? What is my philosophy? What do I think of this world? Right? And that I see that a lot missing these days. I was talking to somebody and I was like, what is your personal philosophy? What school of philosophy you are ascribing to? This person did not know what I'm talking about. They said, I'm a Christian. I was like, that is a philosophy. I will grant you that. I will go as far as grant you that. But at the same time, is it really something that you came up, or is it something that you were born into or raised into, or
They can't tell you what the philosophy is. It's just how they were raised. It's the only thing that they've ever known, right? And if that gives them like a set of morality that, then that's great. You know what I mean? Like, I have no problem with that. You know what I mean? But that inability to question anything serve it doesn't serve you well. It doesn't serve anybody well, right? It doesn't make you a more well-rounded person. It just makes you a more solidified in like your own belief structure. And that once that belief structure becomes so permanent, there's almost like this, we almost shame people for changing their minds, right? Or shame people for admitting maybe that they were wrong, or maybe it.
We shame people for trying anything outside of what our little culture says is okay, and no matter how many we push at those boundaries, look at the flashback on it. I mean, we challenge anything that has that free thought, because I was going to say this. I mean, the only reason I am well rounded, if that's what I am, is because I've fallen on my face and been kicked in the face, and like all those rough edges have been turned into a nice round stone, right? Because I actually went out there and experienced life. I know what it looks like to be at the bottom. I know what it looks like to be at the top, and lots of places in the middle and all over the place with lots of different people from lots of different cultures, so that I actually, you know, can make my own rational decision on my personal culture, I guess, because I've always said that America has no culture. I don't. Now it's just this weird vacuum, like almost an anti-culture. So,
And for the most powerful militarily country on earth with over 3,000 nuclear warheads and the richest country in the world, that is a dangerous path to be on. Because again, I'm not gonna, condone what Bill Maher said, but we are really gun ho. We are really trigger happy as a country. Like this, the whole idea of there is one of my favorite shows on American TV is called Curb Your Enthusiasm, and there is a clip that I really like, and it spoke to me many years ago when I saw it first. There's a part that the characters are standing in kind of a doorway waiting for a guest to come in. The guest is an American soldier, and he comes in. There's like 12 people in the room. They start from the first person. He's like, thank you for your service, thank you for your sacrifice, thank you for serving, thank you for your service. And when it comes to Larry David, he says, nice to meet you. And oh my God, the whole thing melts down, right? The whole idea of, oh, we have to thank people for wearing American uniform. Again, I have no problem with individual soldiers, do you? But the whole idea of we owe something, just because people wear a uniform, grab guns, and do this and that and the other. Again, I don't want it to mix the idea of protection with the idea of infatuation, right? We can appreciate the protection we get from the Coast Guard, National Guard, military, whatever. But the idea of you and I owe people thank or this or that is a little, for me, as you mentioned, Jeremiah, it's a little bit Greco-Roman era, it's like the time of Caesar. I was listening to a comedian that is a British, and he says, listen, Americans, you and the Romans are the only two countries on earth who put their hands on their heart when their national anthem started to play, and I know what happened to the Romans, so be very careful where you're going. Interestingly, I went to Japan. Japan has the shortest national anthem in the world. It is 9 seconds. It is hilarious. It says, sun comes up, emperor, how you doing? Goodbye. That's it. And interestingly, when you go to Japan, you don't see Japanese flag. People don't have Japanese flag underwear, Japanese flag hat, Japanese flag hanging on their car and their buildings and their, this and that and the other. And it was really fascinating to me. I was like, do you guys don't like Japan? They're like, we love Japan. But that's not...
But they're nationalistic. That's the thing that's interesting. They don't virtue signal it, right?
Exactly. For them, at least what I appreciated was, if you love the country, serve the country by any means you can. You don't have to necessarily join the military. In fact, Japanese military has hard time recruiting. I went to one of their, because I was walking a mall, and I saw these American weapons on the wall, like F-15 and this and tank, and I was like, these are American weapons. I'm American. I know my shit when I see it on the wall. So I actually walked in, and I started to talk to them with my broken English, with their broken English. They have hard time recruiting. Because people are like, why? Why would I want to join the military? At the same time, the lady that was cleaning my hotel was so dedicated to the job that she did, that one day I told her, listen, lady, you give me 5 bottles of water every day. I've been here 4 days. I have 900 bottles of water. I don't need it. Thank you very much. She got so upset because she thought I am dishonoring her work. So she grabbed the manager, and the manager came over and was like, what happened? I was like, nothing. I was just saying that I don't need this many bottles of water. And the manager was like, oh, she thought you are questioning her work, and she thought that she is dishonoring Japan by upsetting you. I was like, whoa, that took a whole kind of turn I didn't expect. And that showed me that you can serve your country in many different ways. Why is it that we only look at it in a very specific way? As Americans, I've always been interested in, like, what do you all think?
There are zero Japanese people that didn't mask during COVID. I guarantee you that. We can have the argument as to whether or not it was effective or not effective, but I think what it serves as is it serves you have open societies and closed societies. Japan is very much a closed society, right? So whenever there's not a lot of coercion that needs to take place in order for the populace to pretty much lock in, you know what I mean? Like if they say, "Hey guys, we don't want to get everybody sick, wear some masks." Everybody just does it. They don't have crazy fucking protests. They don't have so they are actually very nationalistic. They're not very virtue signaling about it. But the things that come with nationalism are also some of the things that plague Japan. They are fairly xenophobic. You know what I mean? They are not fans of foreigners, of gaijin of any type. They are not going to date you. They don't want to marry into your family. They don't want to become American citizens. They are, you know what I mean? Like they're very much, highly, I'll just say it straight up racist people. You know what I mean? Not all of them, but many people are, in Japan. And that because it is a closed society and they've always sort of been very protective of their like national identity, right? But they don't, it's after World War II, everything changed though. You know what I mean? Shintoism was replaced with commerce and, you know, uh, what you have now, the Japan that you're always pretty much going to have. You know what I mean? They're never going to remilitarize. They're never going to be. They're always. I firmly believe they will, unless North Korea pops off or some shit. You know what I mean? But for the most part, they're Japanese people are happy doing what Japanese people do, and they don't really want anybody else coming in fucking with their way that they do things. You know.
I was just gonna say it kind of sounds at like where we're going here. I mean, that is nationalism. Nationalism is, at least which is crazy. In this country, it shouldn't work that way. Like, right, Japan is an island. It's always been kind of exclusive, because a whole society on this island. There's interactions, but they definitely have a separation that others don't have, just like we do. But we are such a mob of immigrants. This nationalism that is building on the right is so xenophobic and so.
Well, it's an impossibility too because there's so many different types of people here, right? Like, in order for this country to succeed, we are going to have to accept that there are people that don't look like us and deal with that. Yeah.
Yeah, but are we ever going to start treating them like first class citizens instead of acting like they're second class citizens at best? Because depending on the category of people, we've never, I mean, there's been no reparations that I've heard of that actually stopped redlining and took back the money that all of those families made, and that's an impossible feat anyway, but it's not even, it's never even been close to being legitimate in this country.
I mean, now the story has changed in America, though. I mean, I don't know if it's as firmly about race as we all think it is. I think that's definitely a big element, but a lot of it is just who has power and who doesn't, the elite versus the non-elite. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely, and it's still capitalism, but the race is an easy card to play. I've always said that. Even when I was a high school teacher in the South, I told my young boys and girls in high school that yeah, the racism is absolutely there, and it's definitely in the foundations of this country, no matter what anybody does, and we've done nothing to change that, at least nothing of any impact. But yeah,
It was one of those points of criticism I've had with my colleagues when it comes to these land acknowledgements. Because, after in every university that you go to, especially those who are considered liberal arts or, whatever schools, I remember there before the beginning of major events, they do land acknowledgement. We acknowledge this land belongs to Native Americans, and we took it from them, and then now we're doing this thing. And then I was listening to an actual Native American activist on NPR when they asked him about what do you think of land acknowledgement. It's like, what good does that do for Native Americans? What good does actually your institution does? What good this society does to benefit any native tribes? Any native people? Do we have legislation? Do we have any kind of land return? Decolonization of the United States? No, we just pay a whole lot of lip service, just like the whole Trump and Epstein. Right? The guy comes in for 2 years in a row, talks about how Clinton is on Epstein files for 8,000 times and on his plane for 5,000 times. And then as soon as he gets to power, all is said and done. The other one does the same thing. It seems to, as you mentioned, because we have become, and I'm using this word with utmost sadness, we have become a gullible society. As long as somebody, who was it? Somebody was making fun of Rudy Giuliani and says, all Rudy Giuliani says is 9/11, America, and a verb. And that's the sentences that he has. And all you have to do in America is just to say America, great, best, and then you can do whatever you want. You can destroy America. I was joking with my family and I was saying, I truly believe that. Although it was a joke, it is truly, I don't think America, if ever happens, I don't think America will be destroyed by Islamists or China or Russia. America will be destroyed by people who are shouting USA, USA from the top of their lungs. We have become very gullible, easy to distract, easy to, manipulate, and that is really dangerous for our society, I think.
In some sense, what we did in South America, what we did in the Middle East, the idea of destabilizing is what we've done to all of these silos too, but not only by, ghettoifying and then gentrifying, but also allowing the situation to just fester. There's always been this underlying disconnect and this creation of inability for any community to really feel stable. We accept them enough to know they're there, but we don't accept them enough to allow them to have the peace and freedom to actually be who they are without some sort of penalty. They're never equal. And yeah, you're right. And that's what I've always said. If we don't actually apologize for all the things we've done, we're built on this false pretext of greatness. Make America great again. You got to point to the point where you're talking about. Because I've done a lot of history. We've all done a lot of history. I don't know where the greatness came from. That founding document didn't apply to women or anybody of any minority group outside of, rich white men.
It didn't apply even to Irish and the Italians, let alone, natives and blacks and women and anybody else. And it for me, it is really scary because it looks exactly as you mentioned. It looks like places that we have gone to and created a whole bunch of problems, and now it seems that the problems are coming home.
Yeah, and I say all of that, and of course, then that makes me absolutely look like an anti-American. I'm not a borders guy in that sense. I'm, like I always say, I'm a human being on the planet. I don't particularly like majority of the history of this country and the way this country's going right now, definitely. But I've been all over this country. I've met these people. I've had great interactions with this country, and I think it's beautiful. And I've had good and bad interactions, but more good than bad throughout this country, throughout my entire life. So there's not, I'm not a patriot, but I don't hate America or Americans.
But I still think that's a good point to make, is that point right there, that you've had more good interactions with bad. I mean, that to me is that's hope. You know what I mean? Like, that's hope that we could be something better. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't.
That's one-on-one interactions, though, in a sense where they have to happen organically, and that's just not taking place, and that's why we're losing this fight because everything's done online.
Right, right. Well, and that's why I'm very much like, we should be taking care of our neighbors. We should be taking care of the elderly lady that lives next door to you who doesn't have anybody to take her trash out to the curb. You should be, you know what I mean? Like, be involved in your community because that's actually like really, it's one of those things where everybody thinks of the meta so much of just like, oh, what's good for our country and what's good for our this and our that. And meanwhile, their communities are crumbling. They don't talk to their neighbors. They don't get involved in any sort of civic activities or, you know what I mean? Like, well, yeah, of course you're going to think this fucking country is falling to shit because everybody's just isolated themselves. You know what I mean? Now they can't even now, if you're a lib, I'm not even going to talk to you. Well, if you're a fucking, Trump or maggot, I'm not going to talk to you. And, this is not the way. Like, this is, this is a country that is split almost fucking directly down the middle. So everybody just needs to accept that fact. Okay. It's not 70-30. It's not 80 fucking 20. It's pretty much 50-50 down the middle. And that's probably not going to change for a long time. Right? Um,
We should also be marching on the streets.
No, I think you said something that both of you said something that were really amazing to me. One was that individual and face to face human interactions are so important because that would bring the fact home that we're all humans, we're all, as the saying goes, carrying our own crosses, etc., etc. However, Jeremiah, you said something that was also just as important, and that was, and I'm going to rephrase it, that it seems to me that people have given up in participating in the politics because we all have arrived at the conclusion that it doesn't matter. Like when I'm talking to my students, believe it or not, almost none of them have any interest in getting involved in politics because they see politicians as corrupt, they see the two-party system as broken, and they see, most importantly, the infringement of money, dark money, corporate money, unlimited money into politics as being absolutely destructive because it is much easier to sit behind the anonymous account Bubba 01112 and just shit the shoot out of everybody instead of going and helping that old lady with her trash. Right? Being a keyboard warrior is now so much easier than being an actual human being. And, when you say you've had good experiences with people in your life, more good than bad, I'm assuming it's because it wasn't over social media. It wasn't over somebody creating a system that, because people don't know about social media, the product is you and me. And the whole goal is to use this product, you and me, to sell advertising dollars. Like Mark Zuckerberg cannot give less of a crap about America, about Americans, about people, about humans, or whatever. And I'm just using him as an example. You can use Larry Ellison, Elon Musk, or whoever is sitting at the top of the 1% or 1/10 of the 1% echelon. They don't care about you and me, right? The game is very specific and very clear. You make money or you perish. You make money and buy your politicians and your party and create your, whatever, or you just go away. Look at Trump. Since he went to England and came back, he made $4 or $5 billion over this cryptocurrency thing he created with his family. And do we matter for these people? I don't really know.
No, the whole system somehow has. I mean, the entire idea is no one's paying attention. They get mad at the senators and the congressmen. This country's been bought and sold by capitalism, and it's not laissez-faire capitalism. It's shareholder corporate capitalism where we treat companies as people. Where the Supreme Court was already showing that was the issue, the amount of money in politics. People, like I said, no one's on the streets. No one's on the streets, and they're changing crazy stuff like vaccine recommendations. Come on, polio people? Polio. Really? Because these things don't disappear. You have to keep it's just called science. I don't know what else to say anymore because people are just fucking idiots.
Trying to explain like fucking herd immunity and how we have to how loads of immunization actually works within like a community, like people don't understand like that fundamental aspect that we have to protect everybody to protect the people that we can't protect with the vaccinations, right? Like this it all has the only way that it works is if we all agree, right? And like, look, if they wanted like change, maybe there's not a need for like a child at 1 month old to get like the MMR Mac like right then and there. Maybe they can wait till they're a year old. I don't know. You know what I mean? But to complete say that they just don't need it or just don't, or that you should be the one who chooses it. No, because now you're putting my child at risk, right? Now you're putting other people's children at risk, right? Like that this is a slippery slope. This is not a good direction for us to, that was the thing is I actually had, weirdly enough, a little bit of hope for Bobby Kennedy because there is a lot of problems that with not on the vaccine thing, but on trying to get at least some fucking like basic like health and nutrition back into like the American conversation. You know what I mean? Like we're so obese. There's so much diabetes. There's so much, you know what I mean? So it was like, okay, like great, somebody to shake things up, and then he's just immediately fucking tinfoil hat, like just going crazy, being like the vaccines are giving your kids fucking autism, and it's like, bro, we've settled this a long time ago. Like this is not a conversation anymore, and like I'm all about like pushing health and pushing better diets and pushing, trying to get rid of fucking diabetes and obesity in our culture, but like what are you doing, bro? And like, and where are all of the Republicans that fucking he fired the head of the CDC? That chick was like literally fucking her pedigree was fucking sterling. She was appointed by like she got nominated by Trump. She was unanimously like put, like voted on by all of the Republican Party to have like the nomination done. And then 40 some odd days later, fucking you have RFK going in front of Congress and basically fucking lying to them and saying that like this lady said that she couldn't be trusted. That's not what she said. She said that she wouldn't lie to the American people. And he said that's how he interpreted that she couldn't be trusted. Motherfucker, he literally told Congress she said that she was not trustworthy. That's not what she said. It's completely fucking bullshit, and you even had like Republicans, can't remember, there's a Republican senator from Florida that confirmed RFK, who's a physician, who's like was really like pushing back on RFK and being like, bro, what the fuck? Like what are you doing? Like what like 60 days in and you fired the person that everybody agreed was perfect for the job. So I don't understand this. I don't understand. This is probably a conversation for a different podcast because we're getting a little bit into time. But all of this stuff coming out of like the RFK side of things, and they make America healthy. This is dangerous territory. This is really dangerous territory because now we're talking about public health.
There is a museum in Kentucky that cost $27 million to make, and it's called Creation Museum. And it shows humans riding dinosaurs.
Oh, I want to go so bad, dude. The one that Ken Ham owns.
Like this is mind-boggling. I understand when people are confused about vaccine. Jay here is a biologist, he knows biology is hard. I'm not going to deny it. Biology is really crazy hard. But humans riding a velociraptor, that's not hard.
I mean, that's just cool, dude. I mean, it is cool. Do you remember that there was a book series back in the day called Dinotopia? And I loved it as a kid because it had all these, like, it would be like all these people riding dinosaurs and stuff like that. You know what I mean? I love all that shit because it's cool. But let's be realistic here, people. Like, when you have people that are, like, going to that creation museum and buying into this stuff, um, that's dangerous. This is not, you know what I mean? Like again, it's this whole idea of groupthink of, like not being able to sort of like take things from other.
You know what is the Creation Museum's motto?
What?
Prepare to believe.
Okay, yeah.
Not to learn, not to question.
Is that the one? Don't they have the life size like Noah's Ark? Didn't they build like a replica of Noah's Ark?
I'm not sure. I wouldn't put it past them because I would like to see the attempt.
Dude, we should go. We should make like a road trip, guys. We should go to the Creation Museum. That'd be fucking some shit. Let's go, dude. It'd be fun.
Well, I'll just bring it back around. We have an entire administration full of people who are unqualified for their positions. It really is. It's just crazy that that the Republicans have allowed this situation to go on, that Democrats are ineffectual, and that the American people aren't in the streets demanding an actual government. Now, it doesn't surprise me all that much because all the reasons we talked about, but we've undermined everything, and people are so self involved without actually knowing who they are. It's just a weird combination of the culture we've created. Like I said, kind of an anti-culture. I just, there's no go out there and make your own way, because most of us, no one can afford to do that even anymore. It's gotten so bad that you have to find a job. You have to find a job that can pay the bills, and the housing costs, the renting costs are, no matter where you go in this country, just ridiculous. So it's either sell your soul to pay the bills or really make it hurt by going out there and facing like the challenges nowadays of trying to do things on your own.
And yeah, and it seems to me that one of the things that we are trying to do with this podcast is to do our part when it comes to both being critical of the system, and hopefully we can bring knowledge that is we have examined it, but I also want our viewers to always and constantly question, correct, debate, engage with whatever is being said. I know when I go to my other meetings, I always say, if I said something that was wrong, please correct it. If I missed anything, please add to it, because I don't want it to necessarily go on and on with this episode. I wanted to wrap it up. I will say that part of what we are doing is that strive that all of us have for education ourselves and educating those around us, and at least conveying the kind of knowledge and information that we learn. But as you said, one of the things that I see, and it's really disheartening, is this disappointment I see in the American youth and the American public when it comes to, one, holding their elected officials accountable, and instead of following them and listening to what they say, try to drag them into what actually is beneficial to us, because a lot of people are left out of the system. A lot of people have given up on even thinking about participating, let alone changing it, because we all are seeing, as you mentioned, we see 535 people in houses of Congress, 9 people on the Supreme Court, however many on executive branch, and none of us, I will speak for myself, none of them I can relate to. Maybe a handful in both houses, and maybe one on the Supreme Court. That's it, right? And that is a disaster for a system that is the most powerful military on earth. When it becomes ideological, I don't want it to make predictions. With reading of history, good things don't happen when you have military at that level of extreme power mixed with politics that it is based on some sort of unicorn sky daddy. They have this creation museum thing, and this whole thing is just a bad mix and a very dangerous mix. So with that, I wanted to pass it to y'all if you wanted to say the wrapping up stuff. Today we didn't get to talk a whole lot about international stuff, but honestly, the only things that are happening internationally is the continuation of genocide in Gaza and the British kneeling before the American president, the king, smooching Trump. But other than that, I will pass it on to you if you have anything to say for the finishing words.
I mean, my parting words are just always just read a book, talk to your friends and your family, spend time with people. Always remember that your politics are not worth ending your friendships or your family over. I think people should be very very careful when it comes to that. We're a country of ideas and a country of many different people who come from many different backgrounds, and if you think that everybody's going to agree on everything, you are sorely misguided. So the best thing that you can do is try to have conversations with people and try to see things from their point of view and sympathize and empathize as best as you can, right? But always educate yourself, always read books, always ask questions. And I think it needs to be said, don't be afraid to be wrong sometimes. Don't be afraid to say maybe your perspective or your idea on something in the past was maybe misinformed, right? We have this is really, it's this thing where people are almost looked at as like it's a bad thing if you say, you know what, I fucked up when I said that, or I did that. You know what I mean? Like, people almost look at it as like it's a negative thing. Like, you should always own your shit, regardless of whether or not you were in the wrong. Or maybe if your opinion has changed on something, you know, it's okay to change your mind on things. It's okay to that. In fact, I find that a sign more of a well-rounded and intelligent person when they are able to um, internalize things and maybe find a different perspective. I think that that's a very healthy trait in an individual, much more healthy than someone who is so completely entrenched in their point of view that they're unwilling to even budge. You know, there's no conversing there with those people, right?
So I guess I'll go Fight Club since you stole my read a book. Everybody should just go out, start a fight, and lose it. Get kicked in the face. Get punched in the face. Shit. Do something.
You should. Everybody needs to get punched in the face. It is a humbling experience. You know, yep, at least once. Yep, at least once. And it's a stark reminder that violence does exist very much in this world and can be used against you at any moment in time. And um, yeah,
And I will say that just because you both said the important stuff, being humble is a very good thing. Um, Admitting you're wrong is not a sign of weakness. Compromising with other human beings on different issues is not a sign of weakness. And I will say this, human and nature connection, to be in the presence of the galaxy, you know, when you see it, and, you know, when you look at the sky and it's like, we are on we are tiny little creatures on a speck of dust going around a very unimportant star in the outskirt of a very ordinary galaxy that nobody really gives a shit, and in 3 or 4 billion years is going to be eaten by another galaxy. Shout out to Andromeda. I saw Andromeda last night for the first time with actual eyes, and it was so humbling in a sense that, hey, just be human. And, you know, all humans are flawed. Nobody is really perfect as they wanted to. And the reason I would say reading a book is so important and getting punched in the face is equally important is reminds us all that we're just humans. Very few seconds, if you wanted to put it that way, on this earth, and then gone. And that's it. So with that being said, it is always read a book, connect with other humans, be humble, go to nature, protect nature, appreciate nature. And with that, perhaps we will spend more time next episode on international stuff and, you know, the whole thing, because we're all Americans, all three of us here are American, and we care for America deeply, and we care not as, you know, like nationalistic, but care for people that are around us. So with that being said, I will close this and we will see you all next episode. All right. Have a good one, everybody. Peace out.